Welcome to the Kingsford Flivver Flash. I'm Coach Van Dusen. This is season 22, episode 4, sports broadcasting with Connor Sturgill. We are honored to have Connor on the podcast with us today. He worked for a local news affiliate here in the Upper Peninsula, and he covered a lot of Flivver football. So let's get right after it.
All right, Connor. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Always excited. Very excited that you reached out.
Yeah, so Connor's been a part of the Flivver Nation for a couple of years by being a sports broadcaster. So I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell us kind of your history, how you got to come to Kingsford and where you are now.
All right. Well, my name is Connor Sturgill. I am originally from Lexington, Kentucky, so about 12 hours away for anyone who's wondering just the distance for that. I went to a high school called Paul Lawrence Dunbar here in Lexington, Kentucky. That's where I am currently. And it was decent athletically. Some of, I guess you could say, the minor sports, swimming, which was the sport I did growing up, we were really well in. Football, we struggled in. We had a basketball state title my senior year. So we were kind of middle of the road, had some good ups and downs, but kind of roller coaster athletically. And then I attended Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green, where I majored in broadcasting, and I helped out with the football team at the time. And it was interesting then because we were going through a coaching transition from Jeff Brom, who's now at Purdue, Big Ten. So some Michigan State fans might be familiar with him a little bit, to Mike Sanford. And those were some honestly dark days for Hilltopper fans with how it was working. But I worked for the football team, so I got to see up close and personal, how practices were run, how they wanted, film, and how they were going to view film, and even some other things like just traveling and getting all that into and what that goes into with football players and teams. And when I always joke, I graduated from my couch because my senior year was 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. So I graduated, got my degree, and then after a couple months of looking, I got the great opportunity to have my first job in the Upper Peninsula as a sports broadcaster, sports anchor, and it was amazing to get up there. I mean, I distinctly remember very early on, talking to Michael Meneguzzo, Zach Person, a lot of those guys, just interviewing, get a chance to meet some of the athletes. And it was just awesome to get to talk to those and kind of build a relationship with, especially with those two guys, and kind of be a pseudo member of Flivver Nation, so to speak.
All right. Well, we always, enjoy having our players kind of spotlighted, if you will. Go back to the football with Kentucky. What did you do with them? Did you film for them? Were you an assistant coach? Just the sports broadcasting type part of it? What did you do with them?
I mainly filmed for them. I was what's called a videographer, which is I did handle game film. And I mean, I would film practices, which were several days a week, or I would film games. And, I was up in the scoreboard or sometimes up in the kind of nice, sweet press box area filming games. And it was, depending on where you were, you would get a position group or things like that. And you would just, watch how they worked, watch how the coaches did. Obviously your normal 7-on-7s or scrimmages or, drills like 2-minute drill, you're down by 4, get a touchdown. You're down by 3, get it to at least a field goal with no timeout. So seeing that, and then seeing some of the unique things that coaches, whether it be the head coach or position coaches, wanted, because I can distinctly remember that, things got a little chippy at practice or anything. The coaches wanted us to film that to see who's got the heart, so to speak, who's, not, taking anything for everybody, who's going to try to step up, if it's going poorly for the offense or defense in practice, who's going to try to light a fire. So I definitely saw a lot of, I guess, the other side of the game, even though it was like, oh, you see it all on TV. But since I was behind the camera and when it wasn't being broadcasted to everybody, I got to see how some of that worked, which was very fun and very entertaining and good for me in the long run, for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I remember hearing a story. It was college basketball, but the coach was insistent that they film the bench. And you might remember who that was, but the reason was they wanted to see who was paying attention, who was excited for their teammates. And then I know there was a video of LeBron James doing bottle flips when he was sitting on the bench, not paying attention. So that's really interesting. You got to see that part of it. Tell us about your swimming. I know you participated in it, but then you also coached it from a young age.
Yes. So growing up, my parents I'm one of four, and my parents wanted me and all my siblings to be involved in sports just for the simple fact they want us to stay in shape and didn't want us, sitting around playing video games all day or anything like that. So I a joke I always make is I played about everything actually except football, because my mom being in the medical field and it's sort of being the start kind of right at the beginning of the real focus on concussions, CTE. My mom would always tell me, is like, I would only let you play football if you're the backup punter, because you would never see the field. And if you did, no one's allowed to touch you. So I did, I played basketball, I did baseball, soccer, and during the summer, we had swimming because obviously sports weren't going, or school sports weren't going on at the time. And I joined swimming at a very young age. I was 6-7 years old, and I just fell in love with it because it wasn't something I was innately good at. Like, I could get across the pool as most, 6-year-olds can do, not the fastest time in the world, but it was so entertaining and fun for me. It just really spoke to me. And that's what I did until I was 18 when I graduated high school, because at the time, Western had just given their swim team what's called the death penalty. So they just removed their swim team. So the opportunity for possibly collegiate swimming was taken from me. I was probably going to walk on if the opportunity was there, because I kept being asked about it. But I mean, I was coaching at a young age. I was a volunteer coach. I was at 14 years old. And I was a volunteer coach, and I would coach some of the youngest kids on the team. And with the swim team, any swimmers out there did maybe summer swimmer, things like that. Swim team, you can have 100 plus kids, and a lot of those can be as young as 3 to 4 years old. So I started out volunteering for that, so didn't get paid, but I just wanted to coach, and they needed help with those younger kids. So I started with that. Then after a year of doing that, I became an assistant coach where I helped with the whole team while I was still swimming. So I had to set the example for how to behave out of the pool and, show what practice and everything does while you're in the pool, and obviously help my teams win as much as I could, winning my races and supporting them, being a good cheerleader, good sport, and everything like that. And as it progressed, I got, kind of moved up the ladder, so to speak, to an assistant head coach, where I would also be the head coach for some times, where our coach had some personal things going on. And it's funny because if it weren't for me moving up to the UP to be the sports reporter, I was going to become a head coach of a swim team. But with the job opportunity up in the UP, I chose that over being a head coach.
Interesting. That's super interesting. Thanks for sharing. So this is a football podcast. We want to hear what it's like to be a sports broadcaster. Is that the official name? Sports broadcaster? Sports
broadcaster, sports reporter,
okay.
Sports anchor, all those are in this realm.
So we're looking for, it's Friday night. Every team in the UP is basically playing at the same time, with the exception of a couple times changes, or Lake Linden is playing on Saturday or whatnot. So what's it like on a Friday being a sports broadcaster, trying to cover all of those different games?
I mean, honestly, for Friday, our Friday for us starts maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, because we obviously see who's playing each other. We have to deem, what's the game of the week, so to speak. And for me personally, I always believe, because obviously you'll gravitate towards, the teams that are doing really well, have great records like the Flivvers and everything like that. But I always want to have variety, because, there's more than, 8 teams in the UP. You want to try expose as many. So for me, it would factor in what's the game of the week that we could make it to. And obviously you can look at stats and numbers and wins and all that, but at the same time you have to look at, because a lot of it's feeling it out and kind of luck, because you have to look and be like, oh, this is our game of the week, and the final score may end up being like 45-7, and you're like, well, we got to make this bet and lie in it, so to speak. But I mean, it starts on Wednesday because we have to organize, because obviously as people in the UP, and you might know, we had Frenzy where we had 6 or 7 teams. I physically can't go to 6 or 7 games. So we have to organize with other people, whether it be at our station or even other stations, depending on the games we want to get those into us. And then Friday for the late sports anchor, which was what I was. So I would do the 10 and 11 o'clock. It was sort of a calm before the storm because I would have everything set up. I would be, all right, we're going to start with this game. Here's our game of the week. And we're going to do this game next. And we'll talk about these team scores first and sort of map it out. But that all gets thrown out the window because this game that you're like, that might be kind of like, we can make it to that game, but we don't know if it'll be good, but we definitely want to cover it. And then all of a sudden, they're trading touchdowns and it goes to quadruple overtime or something like that. You're like, all right, that's the game we're leading off with, or that's the game we're really focusing in on. So you can have, it all starts out with a nice laid plan, a nice rundown layout of like, all right, these are the games, this is the order. And then it all gets thrown out the window as you go film and you get back to the station to start editing it. And then it is, as I would like to put it, controlled chaos because you have to sift through all the clips that you go through because on a normal day, you could honestly have anywhere between 50 to 70 clips from one game. And that's only if you stay till halftime. So, you stay the whole game. That's probably 100 plus clips that you're getting. And you have to sift through and you have to decide what are the best 6, 7, 8 plays that will really tell the story of the game, because obviously you want to show the best ones, but you don't want to, here's a touchdown from the fourth quarter and then here's a great play from the first quarter. You want to tell the story of the game as best as you can, as quickly as you can, while not, in my opinion, not revealing who won or who lost until the very end. You want to keep it on the edge of your seat. So it really depends a lot, honestly, on how the game goes. Because, if you got a shootout where it's 50 to 52, you got a lot of touchdowns. If the final, then you got a lot of touchdowns to show. If it's a final score of 7-3, you're going to show more defense. So a lot of it really depends on how the flow of the game goes, and you have to be able to adapt and adjust that. But Fridays are probably, for football especially, Fridays are probably the best and the most hectic because you have to get the game, feel it out. You have your first plan, probably your second plan, then it all goes out the window because then you have what really happened Friday night when it's 11 o'clock getting ready to go on. And you just have to be able to get all that information as soon as you can, because there have been plenty of nights where we have our anchor say up next is Frenzy with Connor Sturgill, and I got like 2.5 minutes to get out there, and I'm still working on like 2 more games before I run out there. So a lot of it is honestly just being able to trust yourself and trust the flow of the game, while at the same time being like, all right, I know how I would want to present this game. So just being able to look at and realize this is how I could tell the story of this game and how this team won or how this team lost, depending on how you want to tell that story.
That's really interesting how you have, you might hit up Kingsford at 6 o'clock right at kickoff. And I'm thinking back to the first game of the season last year, the very first play of the game, we had a touchdown from Meneguzzo to Nora. And I have to believe as you're filming that, you're like, boom, got it. Like I know that clip's going on there. But then trying to get to say Norway, Iron Mountain, North Dickinson, Crystal Falls, and then you have to get back to Marquette.
Yeah.
All in time do you have people up in Marquette who begin editing things before you get there?
At ABC 10 for me, no, it was on me. We might, depending on depending on time, there might have been Dave Siseski, my partner in crime. He might have been there, but no, it would fall on me. We would sometimes have kind of a layout like, hey, I picked out the 7 or 8 clips, but then it'd be like, all right, how do I want to, what's the order? How do I want to convey it? How do I want to tell the story and hype up the play and the script, what I say on air, so to speak? Because obviously you can't just say Meneguzzo to Nora for a touchdown. You have to be like, Flivvers are ready to start their season. They think this is their year. They got off to a great start because on the first play, right, Meneguzzo uncorks, and you have to figure out how you want to tell the story, because part of it for sports anchors is you have to bring the energy, because otherwise they're just watching, a minute long clip and they're like, oh, cool. But if you could bring the energy and show why this play is exciting, because that's also part of the job, is why did I decide? Why am I showing the audience? Why am I showing you, the players or fans? Why am I showing you this play in particular instead of some other one? And like you said, I mean, first play of the season, 75-yard touchdown pass. I mean, like, well, this is why I'm showing you, because it was literally first snap. They did all the reps.
Right.
They probably had, first 10 plays mapped out. Like, all right, this is going to be our drive. This is how we're going to do it. And then literal first play, be like, all right, that's how I'm going to convey
defense.
That's right. I was like, and then it was like, they're ready for the long drive. Or be like, I hope you like defense, because we're going to see them real quick, because it only took one play for them to get there,
right,
because they scored it. And it's funny that you mentioned the first game, because I don't remember the final score, but I do remember it was pretty one-sided in the Flivver's favor. But that's another thing you have to factor in for being a sports anchor, is if you have two UP teams playing, obviously you hope it's a good game, but what if it ends up being, 49-0, or, if you're North Central who beats everyone like 60-0 in 8-man,
right?
But it's still like all UP teams, you have to figure out, all right, well, obviously North Central won and we will show that. But I personally want to convey, like, hey, there were some good plays made by the other team despite what the scoreboard said. And, those guys, no matter who it was, those guys, they left it all out on the field. I want to, no pun intended, highlight the great moments they had in this game, despite they might not have gotten the win.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I really appreciate you explaining how you're telling the story, because I know when we watch Friday Night Frenzy, you can see not just the plays, but also you show pictures of the crowd if they're doing a cheer, and the cheerleaders and the band, and really trying to get the fans who are sitting on their couch, like, to be at the game. So I really appreciate that. Next question here. And we kind of talked before, but there's a lot of best things. But as a sports broadcaster covering UP football, what did you take away as being the best part of your job?
I mean, the best part was honestly in the realm of broadcasting and TV markets. There's a thing called the market system, Nielsen markets, which ranks, based on population size and how many people own a TV and watch that TV for a certain amount of time and watch channels. They rank those cities. So places like New York, LA, they are like top 5. And smaller places like the UP and the Marquette market, which is what it's based in, are a little bit lower on the scale. But it's the fact that you have such that local feel to it, and that, you get to meet all the players, where, you may know, if you work at ESPN or something, you may know a couple of the big time players because maybe you talk about them all the time, and for good or for worse, they respond to you. But in those really small local markets like the Upper Peninsula, I mean, you get to really know the guys. Like I mentioned at the beginning, Meneguzzo and Zach Person, you don't just, for Meneguzzo, we were talking about before, I did a feature story on him where his parents were kind enough to let me into their home. That doesn't just come from, talking to them once or anything like that. So you get to build that relationship with not only the player, but their family as well. And, you walk along the sideline or through the stadium and, fans know who you are. You get the classic, like, oh, it's ABC 10, like film us so we can get on and everything. And some sports anchors are kind of not for that most of the time. I always liked it because it got the crowd hype depending on the situation, no matter what it was, especially the student sections, they always got pretty hyped for the camera, no matter what the score was. So that was always fun. But being able to bond and know a little bit about the guys, and being able to reach out to them almost at any point and be like, hey, that was a great game, and they text you back like you're one of their friends or something, or be like, hey, can we talk about this, tonight, tomorrow? And they'll be like, sure. Just being able to have that bond with them. And then the benefit of it is you get to learn a little bit about them. And they tell you a little bit of their journey, because with Zach Person, being now a D1 college football athlete, I remember building that relationship with him. And I was like, oh, keep me updated on, where you're going, how things how things are going on the recruiting trail, where you're visiting. And he would tell me, hey, I'm making an unofficial visit to here or there, everything. And obviously, without getting him in trouble and with his permission and everything, I was able to keep the UP updated on a great athlete that was going to go D1 eventually at that time, and ultimately did, obviously, at Toledo. So being able to have those relationships and that trust, and knowing that, one, I'm going to put them in the best light, and two, it's going to be a fun time. It's not going to be, I'm going to put you on blast or anything. It's going to be a fun time no matter what the situation is.
Right. That's an excellent point. And you got me kind of thinking when you mentioned New York and LA and those places. If you're a sportscaster there, you might cover 100 high schools, but maybe never really know anybody other than their name and their statistics. Where here in the UP, I know I saw you do things with some of our players, Nagani, Marquette, and actually able to build those relationships. So that's a really great thing. We talked about some things that were difficult. So tell us, other than maybe scrambling to get back to the news desk and get everything squared away, what would you say is the hardest part about your job?
The hardest part, I think, is it's one of the, I have two answers to this. One is kind of a more positive thing, because there were plenty of times, and this is a shout out and praise to a lot of the athletes there, but you can have a lot of good plays to use, and you have to be able to, like I said, find the ones that tell that story. And plus, in my case, you can only stay till halftime, and maybe it's a tight game, and then all of a sudden, the team that was leading ends up losing in the end, and you have to find a way to convey that. And it's a lot of, on Twitter, there's an account called Local TV Sports Anchor Problems. It's a great follow, but I mean, one of the big ones is always, I show up to the game, it's like 3-0, but I have to get back to the station. The second I turn around, put my camera up, 75-yard touchdown run, or 90, like in the end zone, 99-yard Derrick Henry touchdown run where he throws like 5 guys off, and we're like, well. And so it's being able to have a sense of, do I have enough? Am I going to tell the right story depending on the flow of the game? And also just being sure that you convey it and the best way to say it. Because, I mean, it can be something as simple as, how do you pronounce a kid's name? Because you don't want to get that wrong. And you want to be sure that you put a team in a good light, and you don't, I guess, let the fans down, so to speak. Because let's just say with the Kingsford game, they were doing well, but they unfortunately lose in the end. You don't want to show all this positive Kingsford stuff and be like, but they lost. So it's being able to adjust, and it's probably the best skill any, not just sports anchor, but any reporter can have, to be adaptable to the situation. But it's also the worst thing, because you don't know what could happen. You might totally build this story, this highlight one way, and that totally turns around on you. So you have to once again scramble and do things like that. But probably my second answer to that is just being able to know your own limits and have a chance to tell all the stories that you can, because you obviously have people telling you like, oh, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. But I mean, there are times where you have to say no, or you can't get out there. And it always hurts me, because I would love to tell, if I could, be in 20 places at once, I would talk about every great play, every great moment that an athlete had, but you're just not able to do it. So it's almost, for lack of a better term, trying to figure out what the priority is to tell the stories and tell that great moment, while also getting it in all in that time crunch, and being sure that it conveys it the best, how you want to convey it to everyone watching at home.
Right. And there are no extensions in your business. Like when the 11 o'clock news hits, it's go time. You don't get to ask your boss for an extra day, or even an extra 10 minutes, I imagine, at sometimes.
No, and I mean, that's a whole other realm, because there could be technical difficulties, the clips might be corrupted, or the audio didn't work, and you have to hope and pray that maybe somehow you can fix it while editing. Or, if it's a little bit of a longer form thing, like with Michael. Luckily, I didn't have any of those problems, so to speak. But, are they nice enough to reschedule? Maybe we can work on this again. But it all comes down to those deadlines of getting it in time, while at the same time not letting the quality drop. Show the whole play, show the celebration. Don't get lazy with anything just because you don't have as much time as you are used to for working on a highlight or anything like that.
Right. That's super interesting. So last question I have for you is, you've been doing this for a few years now, and now you're down in a little bigger area than the UP. So what do you see as the future for sports broadcasting? So people who do your job, I'm sure it's changed a lot in the last 10 years, from media to, I've seen, people sending in stuff from cell phones that make the news because that's what you got, which is probably great because you get some of those clips, even though they're not the best quality sometimes. But what do you see as the future, say the next 5 to 10 years in sports broadcasting?
The name of the game is always, can you report on it first? But you also have to sacrifice, there have been instances, if anyone follows Adam Schefter, there have been some instances where he may have reported first, but it may not have been, he may not have worded it correctly, or may not have been totally accurate, or there were follow-ups to be like, well, this is bad, Tom Brady retiring. Well, he wasn't really supposed to say that. The instances with the Commanders, or with the unfortunate passing of Dwayne Haskins. So it's always still the game of, we want to be first, but it's evolved from, who can, get it in the paper, or get it even on their website, or who can air it first, to who can tweet it the fastest, and who can kind of be the hype man for it. Because that's another sort of growing problem is, you have to hype it up. Because it's one thing if you're like, I'm out here at Kingsford and they're taking on so-and-so, but it's like the Kingsford Flivvers, who have won 10 in a row, all by like 40 points, are taking on the Redmen, who's beaten them the last 6 times, but every game's been like by 8 points or something like that. Check out the highlights and getting the hype and the clicks, and people kind of bash that. And I am part of that group where you don't want to just do it for clicks. You want to do it because it's an interesting story. You want to learn more about it, but it's always, how do I make this interesting? Because people say it all the time, but especially with the internet and social media, people got 5-second memory. Is the headline interesting? Yeah, maybe I'll look at it. But do people click on the article? Not so much. But it's evolved in the sense of how we get to the story first, but it's also evolved in a good way of, it's not just, hey, we got there first, therefore we're the best station, or we're the best paper or website or blog or podcast or anything like that. It's, hey, we give out, we might have taken a little longer to get this out, but here's, some questions that this player answered that's a little deeper dive, or a little more interesting. And plus the players, everyone talks about new media. You see guys like Draymond, especially in the NBA, guys like Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, who are, really firing back, so to speak, at some of the big names like Skip Bayless, Stephen A, and everything. And they're getting more and more involved. So the athletes, they're being sure their voice is being heard, and it's being able to respond to that, because you have guys like Pat McAfee, who's probably like, if not already, one of the most popular sports talk shows, sports type shows there is right now. And it's because they like it because, one, it's genuine. It's not just, I'm going to give some crazy hot take that'll get people riled up and be like, are you crazy? That's nuts. It's, we have a genuine talk, and that's just who they are. For Packers fans, I know there were a couple up there. I'm one myself. You get to hear Aaron Rodgers talking. He doesn't do that everywhere with everybody. So you get a little insider look. So it's grown in the sense of, it's not just a matter of being first. It's a matter of course, being right, but also, being authentic and deep, and who can put out the best product. Because it's one thing to be like, oh, he said so-and-so about the game, and we were the first to report. It's like, well, he said so-and-so about the game because he, had X injury and this was going on in his life. He may have been second, but you didn't know this information from the guys who reported first. So you should come to us, because you'll get the insider, the more deeper look, and things that you can't get anywhere else.
That's awesome. And you're absolutely right. It's super easy to be first, right? I can be sitting in the stands and tweet out every score as it happens. But what you're really bringing to the game is that authenticity and kind of the story behind the story, which it sounds like you really cut your teeth on working for the Western Kentucky football.
Yeah.
So you've worked and interviewed and talked with players all over the UP and now down in Kentucky. For that young Flivver coming up, we have a lot of freshmen. We should have maybe 35, 40 kids on the freshman team. What's your advice as an athlete, being an athlete yourself and seeing athletes all over the UP? What advice would you have for those young Flivvers just coming up through the high school sports programs?
I mean, honestly, it's got to be, obviously everyone wants to be the best. They want to get better, but you don't have to be the best player on the team day one. And you see all this stuff being like, oh, practice hard and everything. And that's important. But as long as you have to get better, because if you get better, then, your team will get better depending on because for me, swimming, that's probably one of the most team oriented, also one of the most individual sports, because with swimming, no one else is in my race. There's no one trying to block me or slow me down. It's just me. Well, at the same time, I could get first place in all my races, but my team could still lose, even though I had a great, day out in the pool. So it's really just being able to realize like, hey, it is not all on me. I don't have to be the best player at the moment, but at the same time, realizing like, my coaches and myself, like I am there to learn and you just have to put in the work in. I know I had this problem, but having the long-term vision of, hey, I may not, break that record, have, the 1,000 receiving yards or the 10 touchdowns or how I envisioned it. But guess what? We're undefeated. I'm still one of the top guys, or I definitely know I contribute to the team and I contributed to us winning, even if it's just something as simple as being the guy on the sideline who is sure everyone is hyped up, who doesn't let anyone get their head down, no matter if it was a bad play, the score's not going in their favor. Just realizing that, I know what I'm good at. I'm going to continue to get better at that. And at the same, it doesn't have to all fall on me. You don't have to think if you're the quarterback, one of the O linemen or skill position player, you don't have to think it's all on me. I have to get it right. Because if I mess up, then the team's going to fail. You have to realize that it's not all on you. At the same time, just because you're trying to get better doesn't mean that you're slowing the team down. So being able to focus on you. And I mean, you do that and, the media guys, all that will come, you'll get that attention and that maybe you'll get, the tweets and everything. Cause that's another thing. Obviously everyone wants to get recognized, and not to say that, it's a bad thing. Obviously, like I said, I want to hype up, every guy or player, guy or girl who has an awesome game, no matter what sport it is or awesome moment. So you just have to realize like, hey, it'll come. And I mean, we're excited, like the sports anchors, like we're not sitting there like, oh, is he or she worth my time? I mean, we want to go do that. Like we're excited to do that. And we're excited if, they want to have the Zoom call or they want to walk the field with you or do this cool thing. And it's exciting for us. So don't feel like, man, I gotta, go crazy to get any recognition. No, we'll come, it'll come to you and all those things will happen. And then, obviously I know I try to avoid all the cliche stuff. I mean, you just keep practicing, whether it be, how you do in the game, how you catch the ball, how you do your steps in the line, or even how you talk to reporters and everything. And all of a sudden, you'll be pretty good at, you might be on the freshman team, but then, by junior, senior year, you might be, in the running for Mr. UP football. So who knows, but it's just because you focus on yourself. You didn't worry about the freshman guys on Marquette or Escanaba or anything, or honestly, even worry about the guys on your own team. You're like, I'm going to focus on myself getting better because I know that that'll help the team and hopefully help the other guys in my group or just my team in general get better.
That's a great message, and something I share that has to do with the teamwork I use it in my Army job. Is they're walking the halls of NASA just before they're getting ready to send people on the moon, and there's a janitor mopping the floor. And somebody asks, he's like, "Hey, what do you do here?" And he goes, I'm helping put somebody on the moon." Right. So all the way from the janitor to the astronauts to the engineers, everybody was working on the same mission. And that's kind of the same message you were saying, is whether you're the guy who holds the bag and gets the water, or you're the starting quarterback, everybody has a role to play and everybody is there for one mission, and that's to make that team better. So that's a great message, and that's a great place to end. Connor, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck down in Kentucky.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to come on. Always happy to do it. Gave some maybe longer answers than people were expecting, but I was happy to do it. And hey, I may be in Kentucky, but I'll be a part of the Flivver Nation. I'll talk about the Flivvers down here whenever I get a chance.
We'll love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Connor Sturgill, formerly of ABC 10 News here in the Upper Peninsula, and we are very grateful for everything he's done to cover the Flivver Nation. As always, ask that you like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Leave a comment, share with your friends so everybody can enjoy the Kingsford Flivver Flash. Until next time, this is Coach Van Dusen. Win in the classroom, win in the community, and win on the field.